Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Computomics podcast. Our guest today is a geophysicist, science journalist, and editor, Tamara Worzewski. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
You too. I'm so excited to talk to you, a fellow communicator. And I was wondering, as a geophysicist and science communicator, how did you get a kindergarten group to believe they were receiving magic messages from the Arctic?
Well, I once had the chance to visit the northernmost settlement of the Earth, Ny-Ålesund, in Svalbard, Spitzbergen. And there I was reporting for Spektrum der Wissenschaft and FAZ for the aerosol scientists, which were doing work there on observatory. And I also visited lots of other scientists. And one of them was having a balloon, an atmospheric balloon, releasing it to the atmosphere to measure everything you need to know, from temperature to carbon dioxide and so on. And I was sending small video messages to the Kita. And since they had nothing else, I sent them Instagram messages. It was the first time actually I set up Instagram at all. So I made small videos for them and I pretended that one of the balloons, which I was allowed to release, was traveling all the way from Svalbard to them to give them some magic gifts and so on. And they were all in Berlin, waiting for this balloon to arrive. And upon my arrival, we faked a big balloon landing just exactly in the kindergarten. And that was so great because they were extremely excited. They were so sure about the fact this balloon came from the Arctic. I loved it. It was maybe the most fun of the whole scientific journalistic project. I loved it. And they did believe it. And my kids still are talking about it today. But nowadays they know that couldn't have been true.
Well, it's a journey, the story. I like that aspect about it. I'm sure we'll touch down on that point a couple of times during our talk today, how, storytelling can be magic and can create connections. In your work, you're focused mainly on plant science, right? You're both a freelancer and you work for the agency Die Blattmacher, an agency for plant science, bioeconomics, and agronomy. Why is it so important to communicate plant science effectively, in your opinion?
Perfect. Well, first of all, we totally depend on plants. They're like the basis not only of our food systems, they also produce the oxygen we breathe, and they're also crucial for maintaining biodiversity. We need them for energy. We need them for medicine. So we need to foster a better public understanding and engagement, especially when facing global challenges like climate change. Climate change because extreme weather, drought, and flooding affect crops, and thus they have to be made more resilient against it. So public awareness must be raised so it may lead to a positive social change. Yeah. And yet, plant science, or actually plants in general, are often overlooked in public discourse. Yeah, and that might be due to a phenomenon called plant blindness.
Plant blindness. What is plant blindness?
So I will tell you what it is. So first of all, plant blindness doesn't mean a limitation of the optical sense for plants. Instead, people tend to underappreciate the flora around us. So that terminus describes our inability to perceive or recognize plants in our environment. This is a phenomenon that was first scientifically defined around, I think it was 1999, by researchers Elizabeth Schüssler and James Van der See. I might pronounce it incorrectly. However, this phenomenon can't be attributed solely to a lack of interest on the part of society. Our human brain is actually designed to recognize and categorize differences. So when looking at different plants, our brain perceives it as green area rather than a collection of individual plant organisms. And maybe this is because humans prefer things similar to them. Most people find animals more appealing than plants.
Because they have eyes and make voices and stuff like that, right?
Yes, cats.
Interesting.
Anyway, this inability or unappreciation becomes a problem because this indifference and this knowledge gaps reduce the interest in plant science and their results. But many scientific advances, from more effective drugs to more resilient crops, they are based on plant-based research. So that's maybe the problem. And I just got aware of it when learning plant blindness as a terminus, that this might be the basis of the problem in some ways. Maybe.
Interesting. Yeah, I can totally see that. How are you trying to address these gaps or like open the eyes of humanity in a way to plants?
To plants. Well, to plants in general or to plant science? Because
probably more plant science, but I guess they're related.
Yes.
Just trying to go with the imagery here.
Right. Well, for plant blindness, there are many ways of making more aware of the plants. There can be plant apps. There can be just, take a walk in the woods. Just get aware of your environment. And for plant science, it's a little bit more specific because plant science is extremely complex. And plant science has a very specialized terminology. And that can be very challenging for non-experts to grasp. Just as an example, there are, expressions like epigenetics, somatic embryogenes. I never heard of them before until I had to report about them. And they are difficult if scientists just talk about them as if you knew what it means. And other expressions like cloning, for example, are often totally misunderstood. For example, we eat all the time cloned plants. Every banana, every potato is a clone. But when we hear clone, we rather think about, Clone Wars or our Dolly, the sheep. So there is a problem with the terminology. And then there are also very emotional public disputes, which very often trigger misunderstandings and also force conclusions. Just to name an example here, CRISPR-Cas, that is highly emotionally discussed and often argued with against scientific consensus. Yeah, and maybe a third thing, plants are often seen passive. This is the plant blindness things, and not as exciting as other scientific things. So it makes it harder to capture the public interest. And thus, there is a lack of awareness about the cutting edge research happening in plant science. And we try to address this by telling the stories of the cutting edge plant science, or just trying to use formats to communicate what is the importance of this particular science for us. I didn't say this well. Sorry.
No, but that makes sense. You mentioned quite a few challenges there. And I think some of them obviously are maybe for science communication in general, but for plant science specifically. So how would you say could you or even the scientific community address these challenges in communication?
Well, we need to use a clear and concise language. It is very important to avoid jargon. And if you have to mention jargon, then explain the technical language. And then you have to choose different tools and formats to address the different target groups. So scientific storytelling, as an example, is a very powerful tool because using narrative approach can make even the most complex ideas accessible and engaging. Instead of just presenting facts, we can weave them into stories that resonate with people's emotions and experiences.
Like if we take us back to the children and the Arctic, right? You've managed to connect the science with the story, and they remember that. Like you were saying, they're much older now. They still remember that, and they still connect to that. So can you give a few specific examples from your experiences where, besides the one we already heard about the Arctic and the kindergarten, where you managed to use storytelling to help people connect with the science that is being communicated?
So in plant science, one of my favorite examples is maybe epigenetics. This is the word I never understood before. And I actually asked 5 experts, please explain me epigenetics with metaphors, with pictures, so I can, again, address it to others. And I got 5 different answers. And they would be so different from each other. And so we sat together, the whole agency, and they are all plant scientists, I must say. I'm the geophysicist who has never studied biology.
You're the odd plant in the biotope.
I am. So So we sat together and were thinking of, okay, how can we best address what epigenetics is about? And we came to a metaphor, which we would then explain in a mixed film with moderation and also animation. So, for example, we had a library and a librarian, and each book and each shelf, and every librarian action stands for a certain biological process. And just telling what the story of what the library is doing, and then always saying, oh, this corresponds to Methylierung. I don't know the English expression for Methylierung.
Methylation, apparently.
Methylation. Thank you. Methylation. So this made it so much easier to grasp. And yeah, we got many positive reactions on that. So that's one thing, finding a metaphor. But, the more classical thing is, of course, to find the human connection to the protagonist. And as an example here, I loved when we had this PhD student who was doing his PhD on potatoes. And he was suffering a lot. And he had so much frustration to undergo because everything he tried just didn't work for years. It must have been really awful. And just telling this story and also, showing the classical antagonist in these games is, for example, the professor. And the professor would just say, no, but in a positive way. And he would just say how good his student was, how much he would endure everything. And he was praising him. And this was really nice story to tell because in the end, it worked out. In the end, he actually made it. So it's the classical hero story. And that is something which is important because people don't have to understand the science he is doing in particular because it's complex and difficult, but they need to see, okay, this person is an authentic guy whom I trust that he's trying everything to have real and good data. And that is how we implement trust in science communication. That is an important example of how to deliver science, even if it is too complex to understand in detail. Yeah, and another example, if you want to hear one more.
Yes, please. We have some time. And I think because a lot of our audience, hello out there, are actually scientists and they don't always have to communicate themselves, but some do. And I think that's why it's great to talk about that because plant science is important, because it is sometimes a challenge to connect with people. Maybe there are a few nuggets we can take from your experience and that our community can then use themselves or read Blattgeflüster, but we'll get to that in a second. So please, yes, give us one more example.
Okay, thanks. Well, one of my favorite examples is when we were portraying paleobotanists. So they're like the people looking at the old rocks and the inclusions of plants inside them. And the work of this paleobotanist was also to do inventory. And instead of showing him taking out a rock from the shelf, bringing it to the camera, putting a sticker on it, and it is in the inventory, which is a small part of his work. We let the fossil talk. So the fossil itself would tell the story. It is, just about to be in its own words. Oh, now the shelf is being opened. Oh, finally it's lightened now. And, it's just a glimpse of time because I'm actually 200 million years old. And no, he's carrying me around the whole museum. Wow, this is huge. And so many other rocks and so on. And, now I'm being put here. And, he's gluing something on me. And now, a photo. That's me. So it is just a way, in this case for social media, especially effectively, to tell a story which is actually rather boring in a more engaging way. And that's why I like this.
Like a rock vlog.
Yeah, right. I like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, that's just one of the many tools or creative ideas which can go into the storytelling, which also are lots of fun to do, but also fun to watch, I believe.
Well, I think you get feedback from your audience as well. You see what people actually watch, what people read, and sometimes actual comments that help you get there. Have you found other tools or ways besides storytelling that have become avenues to communicate plant science? And if you have, what are they?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, keep in mind the most important pillars are building trust, promoting dialogue, and being engaged. So there are different engagement formats which should be considered for different levels of target groups. So it always depends on the target group whom you want to address. Now, at the agency, for example, for the professionals, we have academy courses. This is also science communication of really, really high level. But SOFA events is one of the things, where we have a live stream with the scientists where people can anytime ask questions via email or YouTube chat or whatsoever. And the scientist can explain his or her science while the audience can immediately interact. This is something very important, I think, for an interested audience who are a little bit more into the subject. But another format, which my colleagues are doing, which I also like very much, are plant science cafes. So they go to a cafe and they promote it beforehand, saying, okay, and this and that date, there will be a scientist and you can meet him in person. And there yeah.
And share a coffee, basically. So these are not always at the same location, but they move around to different cafes in different cities? Or
Absolutely.
is it always...
Absolutely. So they go to different cities and they choose a scientist, a plant scientist, and they train them to give a public talk. And after the public talk, the people sitting in the cafe would talk to this scientist. And this is really nice because they get him to know in a very personal way, which is, again, a really important pillar of building trust, because you get to know this person. You can connect to him or her. And yeah, that's, nice format, I think.
Oh, definitely. I was just thinking, because we do have quite a few plant sciences in our audience and people in related fields. What if someone wanted to participate in this? Do you know? Can you tell us if they wanted to join the Plant Science Cafe team, maybe just for one event or two?
Well, if a plant scientist was interested in doing that him or herself, write us an email and book us for that. That's great. At the moment, we're doing that for the Federal Ministry of Research and Education, BMBF. And we have been doing that for plant scientists within their program. But of course, anyone can book us for any plant science cafe anywhere. And it is a very nice format to get in touch with people which are normally non-scientists, which is the big challenge, right?
Yes, for sure. Maybe we'll just put that in the show notes. So we do have show notes for our podcast. People can just check it out there. We'll put your email address, and maybe that's actually a great segue into Blattgeflüster. So you've mentioned a couple of examples, but we haven't really talked about Blattgeflüster yet. What is Blattgeflüster?
Okay,
so leaf whisperings would be the literal translation to English.
That's true. You know what? Blattgeflüster, Blatt also in German means like paper.
Yes.
And that's what I loved, about this name, because it means whispering papers and whispering news. In German, translated. For Blattgeflüster, I'm an editor of social media, and I work there in part-time for building up the social media channels for Pflanzenforschung.de. And that's one of the tools you have, journalistic contributions, right? In not only in media, but also in social media. And Blattgeflüster is a cross-media platform with a website in combination with Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We combine different components or aspects of science communication to serve different people's interests. So here we address many different people, or we try to. So on the one hand, we show many different people's research from their own eyes. This is something I love very much, because every year we have this photo contest of plant science. And there are lots of people, always between 100 and 200, who are sending their pictures from the laboratory or the gardens or the field work or whatsoever. And we pick up the top 10, but afterwards we show all of them twice a week to everyone with the notes of the researchers. Yeah. So everyone, gets to see the research of others from their own eyes. And I really love that, because, it's so broad, and it's amazing how many different fields of plant science there actually exist. Yeah. And on the other hand, I am, showing my personal impressions of other scientists' research in film reportages, or by picking my favorite citations from them, or reporting on recent plant science research projects, especially those funded by the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, but also others. So that is, something which I really love because I can combine it to multimedia reportages. I can make films and texts and social media contributions, and yeah, that's really fun. And another component in Blattgeflüster is to give fun facts and research highlights on plant science using microjournalism, which is my expertise. So putting scientific findings into a context, which I think is extremely important because that's the thing which is mostly missing. You have a result, but what is the meaning of it? What is the context? What is the application or possible application? So we present it all across media using different tools like visuals, that's like images or infographics or videos for Instagram, YouTube, or what I love most, as I said before, this multimedia reportages on the website. Mm-hmm.
Is there maybe one, like, I know you're doing so much and you have such a breadth of topics, but if you think right now, maybe what's one you could recommend to our audience, either recent or one that's a highlight from a while ago?
Oh, that's difficult because
I knew it would be with this much.
Yeah. In fact, each time I'm doing something, I think, oh, this is the best one. But after a while, it's just difficult. Well, if you like wine, look the one about the wine reportage. I like the recent one very much about Christmas trees. Actually, it also resulted in an article in Spektrum der Wissenschaft. And you know what? I think maybe one of my favorites is the arsenic thing, because
arsenic?
Yes, arsenic. It's about arsenic in rice. You might think it's an old topic because we know since over a decade that anorganic arsenic in rice is dangerous, is cancerogen. I don't know.
Yeah, cancerogenous. So it can cause cancer?
It can cause cancer, right. Mm-hmm. But recently, some plant scientists actually found out that a particular organic arsenic form might be dangerous too. And this has involved in a whole new research which is just starting now. And most people are not aware of that because there are rice waffles. And we don't know yet. We don't know yet whether they are dangerous or not. But it just needs to be researched. And this was actually really nice. It resulted in an article also in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. And actually in this February, there will come out a article of me in Bild der Wissenschaft too about this topic, because it is so difficult to communicate it, because it is so difficult to understand the problem itself. It took me a year to understand, actually, not only the problem, but also why it is so difficult to communicate, why it is so difficult to do risk assessment. And I think this might be actually my favorite view, just because it is so a relevant topic at the moment. And yes, and because I was eating so many rice waffles myself before.
It does impact one's own, habits in a way. We will definitely look up the link and put that in the show notes as well. Unfortunately, our time is running short, Tamara. So yes, I have just one last question for you. You shared so many great experiences and advice on how to connect with people. Are there any final thoughts or additional tips you would give to scientists specifically? You're both a scientist and a communicator, but if you say like your fellow scientists who are maybe just starting to communicate or have had a few experiences, what can they do to become even better communicators?
Excellent question. So what I can give to you is be passionate, be curious, and be patient. And very important, dear fellow scientists, find your target group. And then when you have your target group, then find the stories within the science that will resonate with your audience. And very important, as I said before, use clear and concise language. And if you don't know how, get yourself help from people who know how to do that. And especially experiment with different media. There's no wrong or right in this. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just do it. Get yourself help. Yeah. And you need to know that science communication is just an ongoing process of learning and improvement.
I think that's great advice, Tamara. Thank you so much. I hope you will come back at some point and tell us some more about your work. It was so interesting and lovely to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So lovely being here.
Thank you for listening in today. Want to learn more? Then check out our show notes and more info on computomics.com. If you have questions or want to propose a next guest, please reach out to us at podcast@computomics.com.